All right, good evening, everyone. Meeting number 13. Happy New Year to everyone. Great to see you. So truthfully, this master plan spans 3 years, 2019, 2020, 2021. It hasn't felt like 3 years, but nonetheless, thank you everyone for your commitment again. We're winding down on these topic areas. We have 2 to discuss tonight, and then we have 1 more next month. And so, thanks for your persistence. This has been a lot of content, and we appreciate all your comments up till now. We have a lot to talk about. Of course, we have an open house. I just want to plug again next week, this time, Tuesday. Actually starts a little bit earlier, but we definitely need your help, continuing to spread the word and making sure that anyone would like to come and anyone that doesn't know about it is well aware and signs up. We're nearing about 100 registrants. So we want to try to get the same numbers as we had last time. So just a quick plug, and we'll talk about that again. So Josh, if you can move forward. And we've talked about this. Obviously, the meeting's being recorded, and we do a great job of making sure that we're muted and avoiding feedback issues. So I think everyone's got a good handle on this. And of course, at the end, if there's any folks that's not on the committee or just members of the public, we have an open comment period at the end of the meeting. And of course, we're having breakout groups tonight. So it's actually one big happy family. So we encourage everyone to talk. Try not to use the chat. Definitely reserve yourself for comments. Definitely for the breakout groups. If there's technical issues, please let us know in the chat. But otherwise, please hold your questions until we have a discussion. Thank you, Josh. And so quickly, before I hand it off to Josh, like I said, 2 topics tonight: governance and community and facilities and services. I will note that governance, I believe, is unique to Dedham, where we actually added that as a topic area to be studied as part of this master plan. I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong, Josh, but I don't think all municipalities tackle that. And so Dedham is unique, and as unique as Dedham is, we keep it unique on the master plan. So we're going to be discussing that topic tonight. We'll be doing our same kind of small group topics. We want to talk about the ongoing community engagement, some next steps. We'll talk about the next meetings. And sorry, before we get going with these topics, we're going to review the topic summaries that I sent out to you. And I know that's another data dump on yourselves, but I hope you all get a chance to take a look at those. At least for this perspective, it's the same format. But obviously, we'd like you to spend some time on the content. And remember, these are draft, and we're open to hearing potential changes, new ideas, etc. These are draft, but this is all derived from the community feedback and meetings up till now, and not to mention your feedback. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
And lastly, these are our great committee values and expectations: open-mindedness, respect, addressing conflict as it arises, staying organized, being transparent, being goal-minded, and respecting history without fearing change. And these are great principles that we've adhered to every meeting and continue to. So thank you, Josh. And with that, I am going to hand it off to Josh Fiala from MAPC. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, committee, again for joining us tonight. So for those who may be watching this video at a later time, here's the full list of committee members who we're working with. And we wanted to start off with a quick poll icebreaker. We had success with the icebreaker at the last meeting. I think everyone enjoyed that. But this meeting, since we have such a full agenda, we decided just to go with a little bit quicker icebreaker question. So let me see if I can pull it up as the Zoom poll, which I'm trying tonight. So hopefully you should see that on the screen. People see that? So the icebreaker question is basically, you've got choices there, not all, but most of the facilities of the town. And the question is simply, what is your most frequently visited town building?
Is this pre-pandemic?
Yeah, there might not be too many visits these days, but maybe over the lifetime of your Dedham residency.
Gotcha. Some of these buildings aren't open to allow us to visit anymore.
It's true. So this is a nice preview to the community facilities, which Courtney will be walking us through a little bit later, but we've got a lot of the resources there.
Josh, are us town employees allowed to vote? Are we going to be
Sure.
biased?
Well, I think you, we'll see if you can maybe get one in there for the Ames building.
Well, I'll put a plug. We now have vending machines at town hall, so it probably is the coolest spot now in town for buildings.
So it looks like from what I can see, the Dedham Main Library, 43% is the current leader on my screen.
Is there any way for us to view the results like with the other polling system?
Yes, when I end the poll, I think you should be able to see them. I'll bring that up. So it looks like has everyone had a chance to do that? Pretty close. All right, let's go ahead and end that, and I'll see if I can show everyone. So you should be able to see those results now. So it looks like Endicott Estate had a vote. The collection of elementary schools had a vote. The middle school, the Early Childhood Education Center, and then the Dedham Main Library was the most popular response. So that's a good cross section of the facilities we'll be talking about this evening. So thank you for sharing that with us. Let's just dive right into some content tonight. So as Jeremy mentioned, the second of our open house series we're very excited about is a week from tonight on Tuesday, January 26th at 6:30 to 9. In this meeting, because we are covering 3 topics, we've also we'll be trying to stick to the start times of those topics pretty closely. So you can also, if you have a town resident who may not be interested in the entirety of this meeting, you could refer them to the time. So housing at 6:45, public health at 7:30, or natural, historic, and cultural resources at 8:15. And so if you have a person who's interested in one of those topics specifically, you could forward that time along and invite them to join us to talk about it. Otherwise, we hope people can join us for as much as that as possible. We'll have a very similar program to the last one if you joined us for that. And we will be, again, inviting committee members to play the role of note takers in the breakout sessions as we did before. So we'll send out some instructions shortly in that regard. So the topic summaries, which are leading up to that open house, are drafted now. So we have the public health and livability topic summary, and the summary reflects in large part the conversation we had at the committee meeting devoted to this topic where Elaine joined us. So hopefully the existing conditions and the poll results that you see on the first page of that summary sound pretty similar. And then just to focus briefly on the goals that are outlined in this summary, they're also following pretty similarly to what Elaine outlined in that program, except we did reorganize them based upon the priorities that were highlighted in the discussion we had with you all. So advance to the first priority was for 3.1, advancing a high performing municipal public health system. So that was really the #1 goal that you all were kind of pointing towards as the collection of thoughts that Elaine was presenting that evening. And then we also stressed enhancing livability as a key component of improving public health, and that was moved up to the second priority. And then we added, which wasn't one of Elaine's previous goals for public health and livability, the goal 3.5, which is to prioritize safe walking and biking infrastructure, specifically as a public health goal. So that's looks like it will likely be a cross-cutting goal between transportation and public health, and maybe a couple others actually, as we get these kind of worked out as topic summaries. So you can see those there. I'll just walk you through the 3, and then we'll have a couple minutes if anyone has some initial comments or thoughts that we'd like to take down. On the housing summary, this is very similar to what Alex presented and what was discussed in that meeting. So the initial existing conditions and community input, which outline the mismatch in various ways between the housing stock and the population or the projected needs in the future. And then the housing goals are really focused and designed to correct that through some policy or other measures. So supporting naturally occurring affordable housing, supporting deed restricted affordable housing, and there's some language under each of those as to the strategies which could achieve that overarching goal. Protecting vulnerable households from eviction and foreclosure, improving the zoning alignment, guiding mixed-use development to existing activity centers. This was one of the changes from where Alex was discussing this in the meeting with you all. Alex was talking about it more focused on retail centers, and based on the discussion with the committee, we've broadened it as activity centers. So that might include transit-oriented development locations, and just makes it a little more general for activity centers in the town, not just retail centers. And then the last goal is strategic engagement around housing to help overcome some misconceptions or resistance to housing. And then lastly, most recent in our memory was Courtney's presentation on natural, cultural, and historic resources at our previous meeting. So thanks to the team in terms of getting that quick turnaround with Courtney and getting our topic summary worked out so fast for this open house. But we've basically also followed along what Courtney presented in that meeting with Emma in terms of the existing conditions, the community input, and then just touching on the goals for this topic real quick. We did add some documentation of resources, as was discussed in the meeting with you all, in managing resources under goal 3.1, which is about continued stewardship of the resources. And then also in 3.3, making resources an important part of livability and making a strong connection to public health and the importance of integrating the natural, cultural, and historic resources as routines of daily life. And that makes a, I think, strong connection between those two topic areas. And that was out of the conversations as well. So, and then the rest, I think, were covered pretty clearly in Courtney's presentation in that meeting. So we've got a couple minutes. If anyone has had a chance to look at these briefly or wanted to give us some comments or had some comments just from the brief overview that I gave now, we'll invite those. Not seeing any hands at the moment. We will invite you then to take a look at them. Jeremy sent you the PDFs in email, and spend a little more time. If you do have some productive suggestions, we would be all ears. It's a lot of information, as we've talked about before, but this is really to supplement the information that we presented in kind of more summarized top high-level form in the meeting. So we're trying to give people a variety of both information sources, but also level of information, so people can get the Cliff Notes version. If they want to just look at that very first page of the summaries, they can get a little more in depth if they look at the meat of these summaries, or they can hear this similar level of information from us in the presentations at the open house. And these will be available on the website for people to also download. And then part 4, of course, as was with the previous summaries, has all the ways which people can get us comments on any of the topics, and refers to videos of the committee meetings as well. And Jeremy, what was the deadline that we had mentioned for those comments returning?
Next Tuesday. I mean, preferably before meetings, but I realize there's 3 of them for you to comb through, but preferably by Tuesday. But if they mosey in after that, we will still take them, of course.
Yeah, and that's just to clarify too, that's the deadline, just so that we can get these uploaded for the open house. But then, of course, these are a tool of engagement and feedback on all the topics. So we will be gathering feedback whenever it comes along over the next few months. So with that, we've got plenty of room for the meat of this evening's discussions. So we're joined by two MAPC staff this evening, and we have the two topics, governance and community facilities and services. Brian Luther is in our municipal collaboration department and is a planner looking at governance specifically, and has experience with other communities in New England looking at these features of the town governance. And then we've got a familiar face, Courtney Lewis, joining us again from the land use department to walk us through community facilities and services. So we'll start off with Brian and then have a brief breakout to discuss governance, and then we will switch gears and have Courtney give us the presentation on community services and facilities, and then have a breakout to discuss that. So I'll hand it off to Brian now.
All right, thanks Josh for the introduction. Since you all know each other, I'll give you a little bit of background on myself. I started my career in local government in the town of Windsor, Connecticut, small town north of Hartford, in their town manager's office. After that, I worked as a program manager at the Capital Region Council of Governments in Hartford. And I received a master's in public administration from the University of Connecticut in 2017. Been an MAPC for a little over a year now as a municipal services specialist. And I've received hands-on experience in finance, procurement, public safety, a lot more public health work than I would have expected. Some public health work, IT, public works, human resources, and you name it. So Josh, if you're still controlling the PowerPoint, if we can move over to that first slide.
Brian, I just tried something new for this evening where I offered you control of the screen. I don't know if that would work. If you see
wow.
If you can, do you see a way to accept that?
It does say that you're telling me that I can accept it, but it does not show me how to do so. And I feel unprepared.
Looks like you're controlling it now. So feel free to advance.
All right.
Can you just click on it?
I'm clicking and it doesn't really do anything.
All right, let me take it back. I'm trying to be too clever here.
Too
Sorry.
high tech. It's too good to be true.
All right, so just let me know and I will advance.
All right. So just consistent with the way we've done these presentations, just want to go over a brief amount of the data sources that I use to, craft my original, overview and this presentation. So, first we've got the two Designing Dedham master plan surveys. We've used the Census Bureau's data for a little bit, including PC's data with Data Common. And then third, town website, dedhamma.gov is a wealth of information. And I use quite a bit of the information there to get to know your town. So next slide. So to me, the first place I looked when I want to get to know the town is the budget. In order to understand the health and the well-being of a municipality, there's a few key budget indicators that I usually take a look at. And despite the many recent stressors on Dedham's municipal finances, the town's actually one of the region's strongest positioned financially to address upcoming budgetary challenges. And with the ability to borrow at a low rate, a large commercial tax base, untapped property tax levy, and Dedham doesn't face many of the other stressors that your neighboring municipalities face. And you've got a fair amount of commercial growth recently, and a large commercial tax base, which helps lowers the levy needs on residents. You've had the luxury of spending free cash and on-hand cash for a lot of capital projects recently, and you have the willingness of the residents to invest in large infrastructure projects that have needed override approval. So for me, just looking at a little bit of the the financial health of Dedham, for me, from my perspective, it seems like it's it's very strong. And another indicator is a low reliance on state aid. It shows that your strength and independence, and based on those indicators, I'd say you're in a strong position. Josh, next slide. Another good way to get to know a town is to look at the communication with residents. And Dedham has made some strides and some efforts to reach and interact with residents in new and creative ways. You have the Open Finance Budget Dashboard. I don't know if you all are familiar with that, but you allows your residents to access your main budgetary items and expenses from anywhere, and really go in depth to each line item and what those expenses are. You have the CJIS Citizens Request Portal, which allows residents to report issues and submit them to the town from anywhere. Although I've been told that this is not widely known and or used, maybe underutilized, but I still think that's a pretty high level of service if used properly. And you have the proper tools to reach residents. You have you budgeted full-time public information officer in this year's budget, and I've been told that position's that was filled and recently and will start sometime in the next week. You have the town website, which from my experience has seen, there's a wide variety of wide spectrum and the level in which town websites are managed in municipal government. And I would say that yours is, in the upper echelon of town websites, in my personal opinion. And the town and different departments have a Facebook, have a Twitter, and Dedham TV is a useful tool where residents can stay, tuned to many of the municipal business items, that are in municipal business going on throughout the, in different meetings and boards and commission meetings. Josh, next slide. And but based on the municipal survey, many residents see the importance of local governance, but don't necessarily share my assessment of the town's finances. Local tax rates and municipal finance and issues with local governance ranked among Dedham's, ranked highest 3 challenges. And that's and then also 2/3 of survey takers ranked local tax rates and muni finance in their top 3 challenges. That was a list of 13 relevant Dedham challenges that I'm sure you all saw previously. Josh, next slide real quick. 93% of survey takers listed efficient public services and facilities as important or most important. So, the residents see the importance of efficient public services, and they understand they see the challenges of municipal finances and local tax rates. So from my perspective, it seems like the residents understand the importance there, but they don't necessarily share the assessment of how well positioned Dedham is to meet those upcoming challenges and really hit other goals head on. And then so another thing I thought was pretty telling was some of the survey, the topic area surveys, that second survey, the text responses, were very telling of what residents would like to see from this master plan and their government going forward. So in the next 3 slides, I've bucketed text entries into 3 buckets based on themes what I saw in these entries. So the first is this one is town boards and commissions. Received a large amount of text entries from residents that would like to see more from their boards and commissions, and many feel that they work in silos. They carry out planning individually, or frankly, there are just too many of them, and it's hard to navigate. Josh, next slide. This next one, second, is the diversity of decision makers and on representation on the boards and committees. Many residents feel that it's the same faces, families, etc. And they don't necessarily feel like the town is adequately represented, in its variety on these, in the local government itself and in elected town boards. And third, Josh, next slide. The communications from the town. Many feel that town needs to do more to reach its residents, that either the website is a little bit out of date, out of touch, and that the town can do more to communicate with its residents. Next slide. And I've listed these different themes here just for ease of access and use, but you can see there's a pretty large amount of text entries we've gathered, and those 3 themes are pretty common. But I think just going forward, it's they each have their own specific challenges, but I believe that each one had to a degree, each one represents some how the residents are feeling and things that we can look forward to and look to work on in the town. So Josh, quick next slide. So I've listed all the boards and commissions here, did my best to organize them by municipal function, and as you can see, it's a large amount of boards, a wide variety of elected, appointed, volunteer boards. And I mean, obviously we could go through each one of them and deduce a specific function, but I think that each one has a specific role in town governance, and rather than do that, I think we can just take this as a visual, see it as a whole, and understand how it could be considered as valid that some residents would see this list not necessarily organized this way and see it as a tangled web, or that there's too many, or but I mean I see them, and you can from the town website you can see that there's they each have a specific role and function. But Josh, next slide. I think the key challenges for these boards and commissions is that perception of exclusive participation. Many residents want to see a larger representation of residents participating in boards and committee meetings, but as we know, participating is time consuming. A lot of the times the meetings are at night, and it's a luxury that not all of Dedham residents can afford. And also recently, especially recently, Dedham has a larger population of renters who might be engaged for 3 years while they live in Dedham, but then move on. So it can be difficult to really access the a passionate residency that's interested in staying involved and progressing with the town. Yeah, I mean, as we can, and also like we can see that the structure can be somewhat difficult to navigate. And from our residents report, these boards and commissions, act sort of siloed independently of each other, and there's not necessarily like a uniform annual way in which to evaluate their efficacy and goals and progress towards those goals. But recently we've with this pandemic glass half full, we've online meetings, Zoom, as we're meeting here today in this manner, that's opened up a whole new way in which to engage with residents and encourage participation. And I think, with that, we can start to see a couple, you can start to form, you can reach a lot more residents this way, and you can participate without necessarily having, the ability to, leave home. I think with that in mind, it's a good opportunity that we can look for in the future to sort of build a broader group of involved residents. And then the goals in which we can look more work towards in this manner is that we look for board representation, as I said before, to represent the population of the community and in all its diversity, in age, race, gender, however in Dedham is all in all its diversity. And then that these boards and commissions have clear and defined roles, annually reviewed goals, and work towards those goals. And then that they work together with the professional staff. So as these, some of these boards do have a direct link with professional staff, but to a lot of, it's very important that each board and commission does feel supported by that town staff, and as they work towards their certain goals, that they have access to staff members that can allocate time and efforts to help with certain efforts, and two, be accountable to residents at any hour of the working day. Josh, next slide. And just as a brief overview before we start breakout discussions on some of the things that we could talk about in order to advance some of these key themes and these goals. I just wanted to mention these things as areas that we haven't looked into in depth yet, but I think are areas that we could potentially find recommendations in the process. And that's an investment in IT infrastructure and tech tools enhancement for your town staff to reach residents. Two, I understand that there's a charter advisory commission survey which I've looked at, which the deadline was last week, that we have not gathered the data for, which we could find potential recommendations for. And then also in workforce development and career building in the town, to have a more deliberate effort to plan for the next wave of employees in town employees, and the generational shift from the employment that base that the town has now in the future. Something that we've is not unique to Dedham, but is consistent throughout all of public service, is that most public employees can most likely retire in the next 5 to 10 years. And so I think just like something we can look at is some more deliberate workforce development recommendations, and in that subsect of recommendations. But so to facilitate some breakout discussions, Joshua, the next slide, there's a couple of questions I wanted to ask each of the committee members. Is one, what can the town, what do you think the town can do to better tell its story and reach residents? In what way can the town change the perception and have a more resident focus for its communications, whether that be engagement, public documents, or resources? And two, the diversifying town hall, in what ways do you think the town can show residents that diversity is important, and that efforts are being made to have have the town staff and boards and commissions, adequately reflect, the diversity of Dedham. And then 3, and in terms of increasing accountability and transparency, what ways can the town be more transparent, accountable, and even accessible to residents? So I think that was where we wanted to start, in terms of the discussion for tonight. And if anyone, I'd be willing to take a few questions now. Josh, if that's okay. I don't know if that's on script, but.
Yeah, I think we have, we're moving along pretty well in this meeting. So if we want to have a few questions or clarifying questions now, then we can break into the groups and have some more in-depth discussion in a moment. Does anyone have any questions for the big group? Okay, so I think we have, looks like numbers are about right for maybe just two, splitting into 2 groups. And then that will give each of us a little bit more time and breathing room for some discussion. So let me just go ahead and do that now. And then we will have potentially different groups the second time around.
Hey, Josh, what are we looking at for time for these breakout groups?
I think we can spend around 15 minutes on this one. We're doing pretty good on the schedule.
Let's go for 10.
Okay.
And then I think we can have a greater dialogue together for that last 5 minutes.
Okay.
Maybe a reporting back. Sorry.
No, that sounds good. All right, I'm setting those now. See what happens. Looks like. Sorry, I just got to do one adjustment. So I've got Courtney and Brian, just so you know, I'm putting you in separate rooms so you can both keep track of some of the discussion. All right, and see you in a little bit. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. So as Jeremy suggested, let's just take a couple minutes. Maybe people from each group could share some of the highlights or high moments people thought that were really good suggestions so everyone can hear.
Well, say something. We talked a lot about communication in terms of integrating it all into a central place and how good a communications officer would be in getting that done for the town. That a big thing the town needs is just the accessibility of that information. It might be out there, but it involves a lot of different steps, and that makes it hard for people.
Great. Thanks, Alex. What about someone else from the other group that was out there?
We also talked a bit about that role and the potential for that role to have a sort of cross-department, cross-functional support role. A couple of the other things that our group talked about were the opportunity to have boards and committees work more collaboratively, whether kind of formally through like joint sessions and make it very intentional, or just building connective tissue between groups that might have overlapping or aligning kind of scopes of work. So we happen to have representatives from the Transportation Advisory Committee and the Active Transportation Working Group. And so like, are we as a community actually thinking about how those work together or work alongside each other, those types of things. We also talked about the kind of using the best of both worlds of kind of pre-pandemic in-person meetings, as well as during pandemic adoption of virtual meetings, and how do we moving forward make sure that we can mash that all together to be more inclusive and more opportunities for engagement for residents.
Great, thank you, Sarah. It's great that there was synergy between the two discussions. Anyone else want to share anything else that you heard?
So Courtney was talking about some things just when we got cut away, so we didn't really get to talk about it, but a couple of things I thought were really good ideas. One of them is sort of an idea about a mobile town hall or something that brings the services and updates and things to the people at different times, and sort of made me think a little bit. I know Jessica and Sarah have done these sort of coffee shop or coffee mornings and things. It just, not that you can sort of get services, but at least sort of check in and hear what's going on in town. And I think that that's sort of one avenue that could go. The other was, just as we cut away, something about a citizens academy, which I know the town does sort of annually, something that it always is sort of marketed more towards those who want to get involved on a committee or whatever. And I think that maybe Courtney was talking something a little more just about general education as to how the town works and how to go about navigating things in town. Whether you want to actually volunteer on a committee or not is not so much the point. It's just understanding how things run. Which I think would be a great idea. I think.
You mean Dedham Day could be more than just a fundraiser? It could be an educational opportunity too?
No.
Yeah, and Andrew, I think you had a good point to this too about getting maybe the school systems involved as well, whether that be like having students, sit on a committee for a month and write a paper about how it all works. But I thought that might be that was a very interesting idea too, to get more residents, because like I was telling the group before, a lot of our younger residents, they don't necessarily have the access, they don't have the ability to vote in that particular way, can still be aware, and it's like maybe their first interaction with local government too. So I think maybe a more deliberate effort from the school systems to be involved with municipal government would be an interesting recommendation or step that would be might heed some interesting results.
Well, thank you all. The discussion seemed really great, and it got us a lot of excellent information. We were aware within this topic, I think, that where we're at right now, we wanted to step a little lightly and just get a feel from the committee where you all see governance improvement lying. And so I think we've got a lot of great direction from you tonight to fill in some of these topic areas which Brian has outlined for us. And we'll get those refined a little bit in the topic summary, and then you can see how some of these ideas might start to take shape for governance. So thank you for that. And we will shift gears now a little bit, but it is a very related topic, as you'll see in many ways, that the overarching structure of the governance is directly related to the community services and facilities that are provided within the town. So Courtney's going to walk us through those items, and then we'll do another round of breakout rooms shortly after that. So take it away, Courtney.
All right. Good evening. My name is Courtney Lewis. I'm a regional planner in the land use department at MAPC. And I will be overseeing the community facilities and services element. So this element of designing Dedham 2030 will seek to identify infrastructure investments that support and implement many of the goals and objectives and other elements of the master plan, as Josh just mentioned. The town's public facilities and services are important to the quality of life for residents and can also help create a more vibrant public realm. As the town continues to grow, planning well-designed facilities and providing dependable and high-quality public services will be essential to the town's future success. Next slide. So this is a look at some of the data sources used to gather information for tonight's presentation. This is in no way an exhaustive list of sources, and myself and Brian are still in the process of scheduling and coordinating stakeholder interviews with town staff, as well as different interest groups. Next slide. So some of the objectives for tonight and throughout the planning process will be to gain a better understanding of what community facilities and services are and what's offered, provide an inventory of Dedham's existing public facilities and services, identify deficiencies in some of these facilities and services, and develop potential actions that can be taken to meet such deficiencies. We'll look briefly at recently completed and upcoming capital improvements and how they inform the budget process. And we'll also look at some of the comments and suggestions from the community survey on town facilities and services. And then finally, we will discuss the draft goals. Next slide. I don't know why this one keeps coming up blank. This is the poll slide from the what it's supposed to be is the slide of the initial community survey, and from that I just thought it was important to note that community facilities and services was highlighted as one of the most important plan topics, only second to public health and livability. Community facilities and services are a major component of Dedham's physical, social, and economic fabric. They help define and identify the town, and like I said, contribute to the quality of life, as well as social and economic prosperity of the town. Community service cover a broad spectrum of services such as public education, safety, arts and culture, libraries, and they often require capital investment, and operating costs. Next slide. So this element has two major components. Of course, facilities and services. A public facility is defined as any town property that has been developed for a particular public purpose. The term also includes public infrastructure, including utilities and other non-building facilities, such as parks, playgrounds, and cemeteries. And community services includes municipal services such as fire, police, and emergency services, as well as partner organization and contracted services like solid waste and recycling, public health, housing assistance, and recreation. These two components usually, but don't always, intersect or overlap. And this happens when a public facility serves as a base of operation for community services. For instance, fire services are provided at the fire station, or at police services are provided at the police headquarters. Next slide. So Dedham has some basic public facilities, like the newly renovated Ames building, which houses town hall, and the new senior center. It also has 2 public libraries, 7 public schools, 2 fire stations, and 1 police station. The town also has some unique facilities like the Endicott Estate. Next slide. So this is a more zoomed in look at some of those facilities, showing the location of town hall, the police station, the fire station, schools, and the 2 libraries. The green areas are parks and open space, some of which are owned by the town. And the areas in pink are town-owned parcels. Next slide. So the town of Dedham currently owns and manages 19 public buildings, a majority of which are 50 years or older. These facilities include administrative buildings like the Ames building and the Public Works facility, as well as community gathering spaces like the Endicott Estate. They also include some accessory structures like the recreation garage and the maintenance building for the town cemetery. The town also owns and manages public safety facilities like fire and police stations. Next slide. Public schools, which are on this slide and the next. And cultural and recreational facilities like the library and the town pool. Next slide. And finally, it also includes parks and open spaces that are dispersed throughout town. Next slide. So over the past several years, the town has made substantial investments in its human and capital resources, including hiring a full-time facilities manager to oversee town and school properties, the construction of the Early Childhood Education Center, renovation of the Ames building for town hall, establishing a senior center, roadway and sidewalk improvements, constructing a new public safety building, which is currently underway, and developing a long-term facilities master plan for Dedham schools, which is also currently underway. So this image is a partial breakdown of the town's FY 2021 proposed budget. The total general fund budget, including all sources and uses of funds, is $120,182,820. And looking at some of the budget drivers as it relates to this particular element, education and Dedham Public Schools accounts for approximately 40% of that total amount. Public safety accounts for 12.5%. Public Works or DPW accounts for 6.7%. Culture and Recreation 2.2%, and Town Facilities 1.7%. Next slide. So one of the key issues facing the town is how to prioritize and pay for its many capital needs. The Capital Expenditures Committee is a 5-person committee that performs an annual review and makes recommendations on the town's capital improvement projects. This committee also allocates funds for town projects and studies. And in Dedham, capital projects are usually funded by a special purpose stabilization fund called the Robin Reyes Fund. And this is a local hotel and meals tax that provides funding to pay debt service for capital improvement projects in town. Next, okay. So one thing the town lacks and would greatly benefit from is a formal capital improvement plan. And a capital improvements plan, or a CIP, is a roadmap for planning and funding public facilities and infrastructure. It typically incorporates both the construction of new facilities and the rehabilitation or replacement of existing capital. Typically, these types of plans cover a period of 3 to 6 years and serves as a formal declaration of intent by the town to make capital expenditures on an indicated schedule. These plans may or may not consider multiple forms of funding. So now looking at so now we're going to look at some of what we heard in the second topic area survey. When asked what the town should prioritize through its municipal facilities planning, participants ranked increasing energy efficiency and sustainability as the most important priority. This priority is further supported by goals outlined in the town's recently completed Climate Action and Resiliency Plan. According to that plan, buildings which include homes, offices, schools, historic buildings, and public facilities account for 60% of the total emissions in Dedham. The next highest priority, the next highest priority was renovating or repairing existing town facilities. Some participants were also very much in favor of building new facilities equipped with state-of-the-art technology, which was the third highest priority. Other ranked priorities included increasing regional collaboration, such as collective procurement and or shared services, and collaborating with external partners to meet facility needs through public and private partnerships. There were also several writing comments, which are on the next page. There were comments submitted like where where participants recommended using CPA to fund projects, where they suggested creating a multi-generational community center. Some people felt that it was important to prioritize projects that reduce racial inequities in town, and others felt that it was important to increase transparency around decision making, and also just having a better overall project management when it comes to capital improvements. Next slide. We also asked for additional reflections and comments on community facilities and services, and some people thought better attention should be paid to improving parks and walkability, or pedestrian improvements like sidewalks, and building better connections to those parks and open spaces. There were differing views on whether it's better for the town to renovate existing facilities or build new ones. Some people expressed that refurbishing existing facilities and equipping them with to be more sustainable may be a better option than building new facilities, while others noted that starting from scratch and building new facilities may be more cost effective in the long run, rather than attempting to rehab existing structures. Some people were advocating for the town to develop a formal capital improvement plan, so that town leadership and residents had a clear vision of how to maintain and support town services. And there were also serious concerns expressed about the condition of existing school facilities. Next slide. Next slide, Josh. Okay, so before we jump into the breakout discussion, let's take a look at some of the assets and challenges. So as Brian mentioned earlier, in the governance section, Dedham has a AAA bond rating, which is the highest possible rating, and indicates a high degree of credit worthiness. The town is making investments in its capital resources, and this can be seen in investing in building a new public safety building, the recent renovation of the Ames building, and the creation of a senior center, and the town has established this special fund specifically dedicated to capital improvements with the Robin Reyes Fund. But some challenges are that the town has no formal capital improvement plan. There are there are some building deficiencies in existing facilities. Some existing facilities are undersized or deteriorated, and there are some facilities that are just needed. They don't even exist yet, but there's a need for them, like the multi-generational community center, which some people have expressed wanting. And of course, there's the challenge that's always there, which is identifying different ways of funding these improvements. So different funding sources for these capital improvements. So shifting to the draft goals, I will just read these out and then we can open things up for, or should we open for discussion and then go through the goals and the breakout? I'm happy to do it either way.
Yeah, maybe we'll just see if there's any questions from the materials Courtney just presented, and then we can talk through these and do the breakouts.
Josh, I have one question, and I'm not sure if there's a place for this in the master plan when it comes to funding of roadway improvements and improving walkability and bikeability in the town of Dedham. But has any town within their master plan taken a look at grant opportunities from MassDOT in the long term and put within their master plan, either identifying someone within town government or putting within the master plan their thoughts on grant opportunities to apply for in the future that might cover some of the costs of roadway improvements in the future?
So Josh, I'll just say like two things and then I'll let you fill in some of the gaps because you definitely overseen a few different master plans. Specifically for, well, I know a lot of master plans also have a master plan implementation team, which who's and their charge is usually to see to it that the recommendations and the goals outlined in the master plan are followed through. So that's one thing. Another thing is there are several programs specifically geared to making pedestrian and streetscape improvements. One being Complete Streets, which the town has a complete streets plan, and municipalities are often allocated Chapter 90 funding to make some of those improvements. And there are also other grant opportunities through park and land grants that can assist with filling some of those gaps. And then the last thing that I'll mention is one of the recommendations from the previous master plan, which I intend to also bring over into and recommend for this master plan, is that staff time be allocated, there be funding and staff time allocated for someone whose responsibility would be to seek out grant funding opportunities for the town to pursue. So I'm going to stop there. And Josh, if you have anything additional to add.
Yeah, that's awesome, Courtney. Thank you very much for making that recommendation.
Yeah, I think that was fantastic information, Courtney. The only thing I would add is that for all of the master plan recommendations, so we're talking at the goal level here, which is the high kind of overarching level, but then within each goal, we'll be filling in strategies and then actions, which get even more detailed. And then eventually in this process, each of our resident experts in each of the topic areas will be following through in terms of actions with responsible parties, potential funding sources, and timeframes. So that makes it very specific and gets you that granular detail. So in that case, some of the grant programs which Courtney highlighted in his response would show up in some of those potential funding sources or others which are identified by our staff.
Can I offer one more maybe bigger picture tweak to this, which is in community facilities and services, the presentation and the goals are very heavy on the facilities and kind of hard assets of the community, but doesn't address the programs that take place. And so we have a number of public facing organizations, Parks and Recreation, the library, the Council on Aging, the Youth Commission, where we're not really looking at programmatically what services we're providing and how we're resourcing for them. And I think it's an important piece. Again, as everything is now virtual, I think we realized pretty quickly in the pandemic that a lot of the programs we were providing residents had to really be rethought. And so I'm curious if we can add some context around the programs.
For sure, for sure. This chapter, this element of the master plan typically covers a vast amount of information, and I was hoping that a lot of that information that you just mentioned could be gathered through both stakeholder interviews and if we had willing participants for a focus group to better understand some of those service needs for residents and service users of the town. And so this is just kind of like a snapshot because there is so much information. I do acknowledge that it was very much focused on facilities, but that that was in part due to kind of the quantitative analysis of things versus quantitative, and I imagine that a lot of that information would be gathered both through the community survey, but also in those one-on-one interviews with stakeholders and residents.
I had a quick question about, you showed the some of the buildings, and I know we're talking master plan here and kind of higher level, but there are the two specific Dedham Square sites that are available, will be available, the police station and the Keystone lot that like the planning board and the select board recently talked about. And so like I would think in a master planning that would be something that we would talk about, though those boards are also, it's already like the conversation's already started. So I was wondering if we would look at those specifically. And then I also was wondering how the master plan influences something like that. Like the chair of the planning board seems not at all interested in any sort of public amenity and very negative of the plan proposed by the architects. If the master plan supports something like that, does that get to the planning board? And same thing, the select board seemed like they didn't pay attention and seemed very uninterested in what the architects had to say as well. And does the master plan influence what actually happens in those specific spaces, or is it higher level and those spaces are still on their own?
Should I? Okay. So what I will say is the master plan is something that has to be adopted, and this is the tool and the mechanism that lays out the groundwork or the foundation of things that will unfold, or things that both residents and the town have stated they would like to see unfold in the coming years. And so I would say, yes, it does carry a lot of weight in terms of seeing things happen in action in the future. And you mentioned the police station and so I know a little bit about the police station, but I'm not as familiar with the Keystone site. So I can't really speak on that. But is the question surrounding the police station, is that about like what the town should do with that surplus building once?
Yeah, sorry, that
Okay.
building will be vacant, and the Keystone Light spot is currently just a underused parking space. So like the firm that was recently hired looked at, talked about a square in the where the police station used to be with pop-up space or something like that. That was the preferred recommendation of the 6 they looked at. And for the Keystone space, they talked about, public-private condos with retail on the ground floor and stuff like that. But whatever the solution is, I'm wondering, like, those two lots are so big in terms of like what will happen in the next 10 to 20 years in Dedham for public facilities. I wonder if they warrant specific parts of our master plan, or if we don't talk about those specifically.
So like many things with this master plan, I think that will overlap with several chapters. You know, you mentioned new construction and housing, but also economic development in some of the proposals. The proposals for the site. What I will say is that is one of the questions that I wanted us to discuss a bit more in the breakout this evening is what the process should be, or thoughts on what the process should be for the town when it as it relates to surplus buildings. So, you know, establishing a formal process of how that unfolds, and how does the public voice how they want to see the future of those sites, or make the best use of those facilities once they are no longer used for their initial purpose. So that's something I'm hoping we can kind of generate some ideas about, and when we break out for discussion.
Well, with that as a lead-in, Courtney, should we just quickly talk through these goals and then head into the breakout sessions?
Sure, and I'll just say that a few of these are have been pulled from the previous master plan and added up and modified slightly. So goal 1, establish a formal capital planning process and maintenance plan. Goal 2, develop asset management policies to dispose of surplus municipal property, and to inform facility maintenance and upgrade routines. Goal 3, design, locate, and provide public facilities with features that support the environment, energy efficiency, sustainability, technological innovation, livability, and equity goals of the town. And goal 4, continue to scope the town's funding needs, match them with prospective grants, and dedicate staff time to pursue them. And as as Josh mentioned before, these are very broad, and the idea is that they will become more fine-tuned as we lay out some of the objectives and action items.
Great, thank you, Courtney. So we'll do two groups again real quick, and we'll have about 10 minutes just to talk through this. What you see in these ideas, what's missing, what could be added, and then we'll reconvene and wrap the meeting up. So I'll open those rooms now.
Hey, Josh, can you send me back to my room? I just mistakenly got out of it.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
It looks like they're closing now anyway, Sean.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry
Okay,
about that.
thanks.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. So as we did before, maybe if people would just take a couple minutes to share out some of the discussion in their respective groups.
We need a capital improvement plan. And maybe it shouldn't just be a goal of this, but maybe it should just happen.
I'd also add, in our group, we talked about just not seeing a goal necessarily that's really emphasizing the importance of community services. And that one of the things that we've seen, and COVID, it's pre-existing, but COVID has certainly exposed even more, is that we just don't have a real safety net for our, there's obviously, we have a limited number of people who are served by our housing authority, but there are a lot of people right now who need housing assistance, need food assistance. And we've kind of tried to step in with COVID to make resources available, or at least make information available. But I think that that's something that we could become a much more strategic and programmatic about. So that's in terms of just these 4 goals. I don't see that reflected here. And Margaret, you should add if there's anything, particularly from the Human Rights Commission conversations, that you think is helpful.
No, I think that encompasses it. There's no place for, if you're a struggling family, for social services. There's no social service agencies that in the area. I'd also add like youth centers, and I think that was discussed a little bit, is access to teen programming or boys club or YMCA. You have to travel quite a bit to get there, to get to a place.
Great, thank you. That's very helpful.
Josh, one question that came up at the end of our group, and I unfortunately pushed the wrong button left, was what projects might we identify for the future? And Sarah had indicated that some of the last master plan actually identified certain projects that had community interest in traversing really a couple of decades of expression, like the senior center. And one thing we were asked at the end is what new facility or idea might be on the horizon. And I just want to stick out there the possibility of proposing or advancing the idea of an incubator center where major ideas on technology and climate and other things in a cross-disciplinary way get discussed and attract interest of town residents and so on.
I actually really like that idea, and I feel like East Dedham Square out near the Arts Overlay District, that area may be a really good place to see something like that, like an incubator center. And since it's right along the Mother Brook, it would also have that environmental component meshed in. So.
All right, any other thoughts? Well, the discussions looked very helpful. We've got Brian, myself, and Courtney have some really helpful notes for community services and facilities, and we'll get those goals shaped up based upon this discussion. And then these will be the 2 of the 3 topics which will be showcased in our March open house. So that will be the 3rd and final of the open house series, along with land use, which will be the final topic, which we'll be discussing at our next committee meeting. So let's just wrap this meeting up. We're getting close to 9 o'clock. I think we've covered these pretty well, and we do have discussed an additional goal or two, particularly around services, and we've got some good ideas from you all for that. So let's just reiterate the focus on next week's meeting. So I know the outreach working group has been doing excellent work getting the word out, and so thank you all who are involved with that. And we have, I think, the count this morning, Carolina said we have 87 registrants, so that's getting to be a respectable number. We'd love to push that up over 100, which we had at the first open house. So please do push some emails out through your networks or make a social media post. I think you all have the various tools and templates to do that. So you can see the sessions there. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, please do refer to the specific times so people can, and encourage people if they don't feel they can devote the full, I guess it's 2.5 hours in this case, or 3 hours to the event, that they should tune in when they can at those times. We're doing the same thing on the March 30th session as well. And just as a reminder, Facebook was the number one place where people got the word out or received word from the last meeting. So I know that in some of the breakout discussions, there was some pros and cons discussed about Facebook engagement, which I'm sure we're all aware of these days. But that has been a pretty effective way to get people out for these meetings. So just keep that in mind. You can see some of the others there as well. We've done the full suite of outreach with press releases, getting the word out with email, the email newsletter, to be in Dedham Times, I think it already has been, and all the other ways. So we are continuing to track right along with the projected schedule. This current section of the process, which we've been involved in with these topic area discussions, will actually be wrapping up soon, and we'll be maybe shifting gears a little bit as we get past February, and we might have a little bit different meeting format to go along with those, because we won't be doing this series of one topic per meeting. So shortly after we conclude these open house series, one of the things we'll have to do with you all is review the input from those meetings and discuss the changes that would be come along with that feedback and input for where these different topic areas are headed. So the spring will be a little bit of shifting gears, which will probably be a welcome change of pace from the mode we've been on for the past 7 or 8 months. And to wrap this up, I myself will be presenting land use, which is I think a really nice way to summarize all of this together and look at these patterns more spatially, and think about how land use patterns in the town relate to each of our topic areas. So that will be a fun meeting, and we'll be looking at that on the 16th. Or I guess, no, Jeremy, you wanted to bring up the date actually, because we've realized that date is smack dab in the middle of school vacation week. So we might want to, if people would be interested, push that to the following Tuesday, which would be the 23rd, I believe.
Yes, I mean, everyone's going to be flying away to warm tropical areas, so I figured we should probably have that on another week, and to be sensitive to folks that might be, we tend not to have meetings during school vacation. So if I remember way back, our polling on what days were open, I remember 3rd and 4th Tuesdays seemed to be very popular days. So I'm hoping everyone would be okay with that.
Hey, would you guys mind if just closing the slides so everyone can see each other, and that way we can kind of see if people are thumbs upping or shaking their heads or whatever?
Sure.
Thank you.
I saw all thumbs up.
So what's the date then? It'd be February
23rd. Same
23rd.
time,
Great.
same place. And so Margaret said she has school committee that night.
Margaret, for Melrose or Dedham?
Yeah, for work. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right.
And I have to attend that one.
All right.
Come on, Dedham's more important, Margaret.
Doesn't pay the bill.
Sadly, none of us are getting paid for these meetings in Dedham.
All right, so the 23rd it is. Thank you everyone for that. And just real quick, meeting minutes. Hopefully everyone got a chance to read the ones from, what is it, December, pardon me, I think it was December 17th. Does that ring a bell? Right?
I have to admit, I did not. Were those attached in the email, Jeremy?
Those are on the Dropbox link that I
Okay.
provided. We can table them if folks didn't get a chance to read them.
I missed them too, to be honest.
All right, we'll table that to the next month. That's fine.
Dropbox, and I've got the Dropbox pulled up. So
All right, so you guys have homework.
Okay.
And with that, anything else, Josh?
I think just a final reminder, the other homework assignment potentially would be to take a look at those 3 new topic summaries. And if you have some thoughts about how to make them better, we would be happy to hear.
And like Josh said, we will be revisiting all these in totality when we shift gears in spring too. So I think there's a number of opportunities to, after we've talked all about this, to think about these and what we've heard, and do they need to be tweaked, changed, kept as new? We will continue to have that conversation.
And I just would add on those, the MEPC team is very flexible in terms of how you give them feedback. So if you can print it out and handwrite on it, they'll do that. You can email, content, but I've watched them do both, and they're very patient with whatever scrawl, whatever format you want to give them feedback. So encourage you to do that.
Videos.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we haven't received a video yet, but I'd be happy to watch a video if you just like to
live streams. Okay, there you go.
So with that, thank you everyone. Please continue to promote for next week, and we will hope to see you all there next Tuesday night for another eventful meeting, and I'm sure a great attendance and another productive open house. So thank you everyone.
Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks, Josh. Beautifully done, everybody at
Thank you.
MAPC.
Yes.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you all. Thank you, Courtney, and thank you,
Thanks,
Brian.
everybody. Yeah, thanks, Courtney and Brian.
Good
That was
night,
great.
everybody. Thank you.
Good night.
Night.